The Trump administration is taking aim at sanctuary cities, municipalities with laws in place to limit cooperation with federal agencies' efforts to deport undocumented immigrants. Yesterday, the Trump administration filed suit in federal court in Chicago, claiming that sanctuary laws in that city and in Illinois have impeded the mass deportations. One of these laws, the Trust Illinois Act, was signed into law by a Republican governor in 2017, and it prevents local law enforcement from holding immigrant prisoners without a warrant. Even with Chicago's status as a sanctuary city, ICE raids have shaken vulnerable communities, the way they live and the way they experience normal life to their cores. Workplaces and schools are reporting mass absences, with people too afraid to show up for work or to drop their kids off to school. One advocate telling The Guardian the prospect of Trump raids are terrifying kids, regardless of their immigration status. Quote, amid immigration raids, now teachers also have to grapple with their students' difficult questions and fears about deportations. Children don't see immigration status, children see friends. What happens if students see their classmates plucked out of a classroom? So how do you explain these things to them? We're back with Jacob, John, and Basil. Jacob, what's been going on this week?
The thing about sanctuary cities, I think, is important for everybody to understand is the reason that these local jurisdictions commit to these so-called sanctuary policies is because, according to local law enforcement, if you talk to the police chief here in LA, for instance, they will tell you that they make the city safer, not more dangerous. This is a city, Los Angeles, that is a quote-unquote majority minority. I don't love that term, but the Latinos are the demographic majority in the city of Los Angeles. There are a fair number of undocumented folks who live here, who go to the schools here, who work in workplaces here. And when just your immigration status would become, or if it would become, a crime in the eyes of local law enforcement, not only are, as you just reported there, children afraid to go to school, people afraid to go to work, but people in those communities are less likely to report crimes, violent crimes, predatory crimes, you name it. And so when the federal government says that this is an obstruction of federal immigration laws, there's a very specific reason why local jails are not also immigration detention centers, because it affects everything about the city and the community to detain people just for their status, which is not a crime. It's a civil offense. It is not a criminal offense to be in the United States as an undocumented person. And so that's why cities all across the country for many years have committed to these sanctuary policies, and why the law enforcement will tell you that they make it safer, not more dangerous.
You know, and there are some immigration attorneys and activists that say it's a lot of bluster from the Trump administration. A lot of this stuff is not going to go particularly far in court. But the reality is, if you're a person that's affected by it or a family, this is going to scare the hell out of you.
Forever.
And it's going to damage them, their families, their communities, certainly the economy down the road. And you know, I just think about the fact that, and I hope my father doesn't be mad at me for saying this. When he came into this country in 1970, he was supported by Catholic Charities. He still remembers the nun's name 55 years later. An organization that J.D. Vance went after, right, because they were supporting immigrants. This is something that we do in our country because we understand the value of and the support of immigrants to our country. And to see that there are kids that have to stay home from school because they're afraid of what's going to happen. And I'm glad that the mayors are really taking a stand, and that the lawyers nationally are coming together to try to inform people of their rights. And again, this is part of that groundswell of support that can come from the grassroots to try to push this back.
Jacob Soboroff, thank you for your reporting and for joining us today. It's great to see you.
Nicole.
John Hallman, thank you for being here.
By the way, one other thing about Trump and the water.
Yeah.
He talks about it in terms of barrels.
Of water.
Barrels.
Like oil
barrels,
or wine.
like oil.
Or wine. I was
Interesting.
thinking about
like,
wine.
nobody really talks
Friday.
about water, and that's not the way you talk about water. You
Yeah.
talk about petroleum that way.
Yeah, I like that you're on the grammar police beat.
Oh, I like to monitor
right
the language.
Basil,
You know how it
thank
is.
you very much.